So let's look at this. This is a nutrition fact, whatever that means. It comes from the experts. Let's focus in on what these facts are. Total carbs, 26 grams, percent DV. That means the percentage of the daily value of 26 grams of carbs is 9%. Well, what does that mean? That means if you take 9 and multiply it by 11, you end up with 99%, which is basically 100%, right? If you take 26 and multiply it by 11, you end up with 298. So basically what they're saying is if you eat 11 boxes of Frosted Flakes, which is 3/4 of a cup, it's a little box. If you eat 11 of these, you will have the minimum requirement of carbohydrates in your diet every day. This is based on the food pyramid. Okay? So this is really not a good thing to do. This is based on a 2,000 calorie diet, by the way. And most people eat more than 2,000 calories, and the experts are saying that we need at least 375 grams of carbs if you're going to have a 3,000 calorie diet. Well, let me tell you what would happen to you if you ate that many grams of carbohydrates. You would probably be obese, have high blood pressure, diabetes, and heart disease. Now, this is a low-fat food. It's got 0 saturated fat, no trans fat, and it's full of these wonderful synthetic vitamins. Does that mean it's good for you? Well, absolutely not. By the way, Frosted Flakes, until fairly recently, was endorsed by major medical organizations, including the American Heart Association, because it had no saturated fat or cholesterol. They have removed their endorsement from that. There are still other products that they endorse, and I'm not quite sure why. Let's look at some of the other ingredients in here. Contains milled corn, sugar, malt flavoring, high fructose corn syrup, salt, sodium ascorbate, and ascorbic acid. This is vitamin C, niacinamide, iron, pyridoxine hydrochloride, riboflavin, thiamine hydrochloride, vitamin A, blah, blah, blah. What is pyridoxine hydrochloride? It's B6. Actually, it's not really B6. It's the inactive precursor form of B6. The more of this stuff that you eat, so actually, in order for you actually to use the B6, you have to use some B2, you need some magnesium, some other minerals. The more of this stuff that you eat, the less minerals you have in your body. That's scary, because there's so many fortified foods out there. The more of them you eat, the less nutrition you get. Be wary of items that actually have these vitamins in them. And the really scary part, go to the health food store and get yourself a bottle of B50 or B100, and guess what? It's the same garbage that they're putting in the food. And there's plenty of people that are taking these things because they think they're good for them. This is megadose nutrition at its worst. The more you have, the more minerally deficient you're going to become, and you could cause all sorts of imbalances. And B100s, of course, are twice as good as B50s. I'm kidding. We're being told, and this is up to date, this is not like an old package. As of today, June 10th, 2009, we're being told to eat at least 300 grams of carbs a day on a 2,000 calorie diet, and more if you have more, at least, and keep your fat down and keep this down and all these other things. This will cause a dietary imbalance. Yes?
How are Cheerios?
Less bad than Frosted Flakes?
Really?
Sucker. Too many carbs, whether you get them from potatoes or fruit or Frosted Flakes or high fructose corn syrup or whole grain, gluten-free, organic sprouted bread. Too many carbohydrates is no good. Now, too few is also no good. Where is the soup just right? Where is the proper spot on that U-shaped curve? Is it 300 grams a day? Is it 375 grams a day? No way, Jose. Okay, it's way less than you may think. Now, there was this crazy doctor years ago. His name was Dr. Atkins. And he recommended less than 30 grams a day. And I'm not recommending that, but Dr. Atkins was way closer to where it should have been than 375, let me tell you. How much carbs should we eat? Well, let's look at what happens if you eat too many carbs, regardless of the source. It'll actually lower your basal metabolic rate. It'll increase your estrogen levels, increase insulin, raise triglycerides, raise cholesterol, make your liver fat. It can lead to higher low blood sugar. It actually causes metabolic syndrome. Now, how many people have heard of metabolic syndrome? Okay, it's basically high triglycerides. She works with me. High triglycerides, low HDL, and it's a syndrome of diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, and obesity. It's probably one of the leading causes of death in our country. It's being caused by high-carb diets. What is a high-carb diet? It's the one that's being recommended by the food pyramid and the food industry. You want to actually put your body, we talked about being in cruise control. This is where I'm going to get into what should we eat, Doc. I'm going to turn things around and wrap things up. What should we eat then? Well, first of all, you don't want to eat all those poisons, of course. You want to eat a balanced proportion of carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Well, how much is that? Well, it's going to be different for everybody, a little bit, but I can give you some general guidelines before you leave. Now, the cruise control diet will help you maintain your blood sugar control and helps maintain healthy lipid levels and helps maintain healthy weight. And here it is. Now, this diet, by the way, came from this research of Dr. Price and some of his contemporaries. This is basically equivalent to what those natives were eating as best we can do today in 2009. You want to try to eat a certain amount every day, for 3 meals a day, and every meal should include a serving of meat, fish, poultry, eggs, and cheese. Now, why is it? You want to put a log on that metabolic fire. This will help keep your blood sugars from either going too high or too low. How much of that do you need? Not a whole lot. You've heard, eat about the size of the palm of your hand. It's not just one slice of cheese, it's the thickness of your hand. If you weigh, I'll just pick an example, if you weigh about 170 pounds, your typical textbook person, it's somewhere around 4 ounces. 4 ounces of one of these things 3 times a day. That's the log on your metabolic fire. It will help stabilize your blood sugar. You want to eat plenty of low-starch vegetables, not high-starch vegetables. Low-starch vegetables have very little carbs in them. Eat as much low-starch vegetables as you want. They're full of minerals. They're full of fiber. They'll fill you up to a certain degree. They won't make you fat. What are low-starch vegetables? Well, things like broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and spinach and kale and collard greens, lettuce. Okay, these things are relatively low starch. You want to limit your intake of sugar, including fruit, for obvious reasons. Avoid juice and other sweetened beverages. Talked about that. Spring water should be your main drink. We addressed that already. You want to avoid consuming polyunsaturated vegetable oils. These are found, unfortunately, in a lot of salad dressings, mayonnaise, margarines, and foods cooked in these oils. You want to avoid fried foods. And you want to avoid megadose nutritional supplements. And avoid overcooked, microwave, overprocessed, denatured food. Microwave cooking is really, really bad. Terrible stuff. So how much carbs should you eat? If you're at your optimal weight and you weigh about 170 pounds, I'd say probably around 100 grams a day is probably a pretty good amount of carbs. Now, what is 100 grams of carbs? That's about the equivalent of 2 slices of bread 3 times a day. That seems fairly reasonable, right? 2 slices of bread for breakfast, the equivalent of 2 slices of bread for lunch, 2 slices of bread for dinner. It's different than the 4 servings that they're telling us to have 3 times a day. That would be the equivalent of 8 slices of bread 3 times a day. That would probably make you a little chubby. Okay? So now, if you're overweight, you want to reduce those carbohydrates more. Certain people can reduce it quite a bit more. Certain people need to eat carbs, and everybody's different, and I couldn't tell you who's who based on just sitting there. But there's actually ways of checking to see what's best for your particular metabolic oven.